Okay, first thing, don't fall off the stage.
That's right.
Okay, we're winning so far.
You've probably been on a few of these stages before, so
Yeah.
I bet you can manage. Well, Donnie, thank you so much for taking some time out and spending some time with us here at Oklahoma State. Lyndall gave a little bit about your background. As best I can tell, you have an animal science degree from University of Tennessee, and not too long after graduating from there, made your way to Tyson, and spent a long career there, ultimately ending up as CEO. Talk a little bit about just the change that you saw both in the poultry industry and animal agriculture. Like, what are some of the biggest changes that you saw over the course of that career?
Yeah. Wow. That's so much. I think the productive capability of the animal agriculture side of that. When I started, I was a service tech, helped the farmers grow good chickens. I also grew chickens myself because I needed to understand what they were going through, so I grew. And I was having a good grow out back then. If I had a 5.2 pound bird with probably a 210 feed conversion, and probably back then 42, 43 days. Today, we'll have a 5 pound chicken with about a 1.6 feed conversion in 30, maybe 34, 35 days. It's incredible. And the same things happened in pork. The same things, the beef animals are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, as we go.
How much of that is genetics versus other things?
So I think there's been a combination. Genetic progress has been tremendous. There's old pictures where you go back to like 1960 and you split a whole bird horizontally in half and look at the breast, right? And then you do that in 2010, and it's just a different animal, right? Mm-hmm. So there's been a lot of genetic progress, but there's also been, I don't know, I better not say who's been responsible for the most progress, but the animal nutrition and what we know today about that bird's genome and how to feed it for really, maximum efficiency is amazing. And then the environment that these birds are growing in today. Same thing in swine. That just if you when you combine the environment, the nutrition, the health progress we've made, plus the genetics, it's just amazing what we've been able to accomplish. But another thing that just astounds me is how much we have to fight the consuming public that we actually do good for the world. I mean, I spent most of my time publicly, and not most, but a lot of my time publicly speaking to some kind of backlash from an activist, whether it was a animal welfare activist or an environmental activist, or I called them food activists. If it's not organic, and if oh my goodness, if it's GMO, how are you going to survive, right? So what we've been able to accomplish in our generation is amazing without AI. I mean, just think what we can do now with AI and quantum computing, and that'll. I mean, there's a microscopic gene somewhere that's going to unlock the potential of something that's going to amaze us all. And today we have no idea what we're looking for.
Yeah.
Right. So I think those are what's astounded me the most is about how much progress we've made in agriculture and how little credit we get for it from the consuming public.
You're hitting on a couple of things I wanted to ask you about. One was, that what's in the future. So you mentioned AI and some things there, continued genetic improvement. Are there other things there? Like, maybe it's not, is it continued improvements in efficiency, or what do you think?
Yeah. So in mid-90s, I call it 95. I was in Des Moines at Pioneer, and I was at the time I was a grain buyer at Tyson, and just wanted to try to understand genetic yield progress and that sort of stuff. So why not go to Pioneer? And one of the scientists told me there, he said, we will put 2 points of yield potential in a corn seed in perpetuity. And I went, whoa. Well, you go back to 1995 and exclude a drought year or whatever, but get to 2025. So what's that, 30 years, right? And you look at the yield progress in corn, it's about 2% a year, right? And now they've got, well, they probably have had AI for longer than a lot of people, but now with how much faster you can get an answer, so yeah, I think we'll continue to see great strides in production. I think ultimately, and I say this because of something that Bill Gates said. Not that I agree with everything he thinks about agriculture, but he did say this at one of his Microsoft CEO summits, is that eventually the public will come to understand how beneficial GMOs and those types of things are, and there will be less resistance to using traditionally grown crops and all that. And I think he's probably right. And maybe some of the scientific progress that we continue to make will help us get there. But I'll tell you, while I was at Tyson, it felt like an unwinnable war. It did. But precision ag, finding the micronutrients that plants need, that we can't look for that today. Using drone technology, I think a lot, obviously, still about animal production and the things that we can do, specifically for animals. Find, like, there's some work being done now to where you have sensors and they're basically heat sensors, and they're looking for that sow or that pig whose temperature has risen by more than 1.5 degrees. That animal needs some help, right? Couldn't do it. No clue how to do that, in 1980, 90, and 2000, right? But that stuff's possible now.
Yeah.
And those little, a few of those little tweaks across billions of animals across the world will make a lot of difference.
Yeah. You mentioned, when you were CEO, having to deal with criticisms from the general consuming public. But I wonder if you could talk to this group a little bit. There are lots of folks in here that work a lot with producers. Yeah. Cattle producers, sometimes poultry producers. How would you handle some of those, concerns people mentioned, whether it was, concentration, integration, those sorts of things? Like, what are the good sides of those things, if there are any that you want to speak about?
Yeah. Look, it's hard to find an industry that doesn't get more efficient with scale. Even if it's just, now I've got, 3 buildings, but I don't have 3 different purchasing people. I have one purchasing person that's now buying stuff that gets manufactured in 3 buildings instead of 1. You're more efficient. Mm-hmm. And if you look at anything that affects the business, the price of land. One of the things that my home state, Tennessee, focuses on a lot is land loss. And it's a big deal in Tennessee, right? So you're going to have less and less land under tillage or in production. And so you've got to get more efficient doing it. And you're going to do that with scale and technology. If you can spread that tank of diesel over 40 animals instead of 14 animals, your fuel cost per pound is going down, right? And so I was in a conversation once with Kathleen Merrigan. She was number 2 at USDA at the time, and we were going to discuss one of the shutdowns, and I just wanted to know if my inspectors were going to be deemed essential because we had orders to fill. So we were up to talk about that. Didn't get much of an answer on that one. And so we had like 30 minutes to kill, and she said, well, Chuck Penry, my government relations guy, said, okay, well, we got some time to kill. Kathleen, put a question on the table. So she said, well, what are you doing to grow more locally? And I thought, and it came out, you know when it comes out and it probably should have been ruminated on just for a few more seconds? Yeah, anybody ever do that? So I said, we got pigs, cows, and chickens growing from Maryland to New Mexico. We're local to everybody. Well, that conversation died for lack of a second, right? But we do, right? Listen, I can't speak for Tyson anymore, but I was really, really proud of what our team did. Well, I was really proud of the 36-year career and really proud of the work. We made great food, and we made a difference. And I can look back at that with with a real sense of accomplishment, knowing I did precious little to help it, but I had a great team that worked well together, led people well, and accomplished a lot. So I hope that doesn't change. There is and I'm preaching to the choir, obviously, but between now and 2050, we're going to add another short 2 billion people on this planet. 1 billion of them are going to be on the African continent, where I try to make an impact. But most all of them are going to be born in the developing world. We better figure out a way to feed them people.
Yeah.
Because hungry people do desperate stuff.
I want to talk to you a little bit about that, but before I do that, I want to stick on your role as CEO. I'm going to ask you kind of a dumb question maybe, but what's a day in the life of a CEO? What does a CEO of a big publicly traded company do during the day?
Pray. Rather than a day, let me do a month.
Yeah.
Okay? I felt like it was really important that at the time, 115, 120,000 people that worked at Tyson understood that their boss was normal. And, he mows his grass and he just has a different job. And so for 5 days a month, and a lot of times my wife went with me because when I was the CEO, our kids were at least in college, if not out. And so we would get in the truck and we would drive through Oklahoma and Texas, and we'd go to all the plants, and we'd walk through and tour the plants, we'd get in a room, I was big and beautiful as this, but get in a room, and they'd ask me a question about anything. And I'd stay I'd stay until the people said, you got to go because you got to be in Holdenville in, an hour and a half, and it's a 2-hour drive. So you got to shut up and get out of here. You just got such a great feel for the world that they live in. And I grew up in that world, right? I grew up helping people grow chickens. I grew up growing chickens, worked in the plants, worked in the feed mill. I mean, I worked for a living, just about my whole career. I don't know, I kind of think I'm starting to ramble now, but so I'd spend 25% of my week with our people. It ended up being about another 25% with investors. Big public company, and you have to do what you can do to inform the people that own your company about what you're trying to accomplish and how well it's going, or not how well it's not going, and what you're doing to fix it. And then probably the next 25% slice was in some form developing people. I talked to every orientation group at corporate. I was always at our training centers pouring into people mainly about how to lead and how to create a winning culture. Sometimes technical stuff, but more the leadership side. And I spent a lot of time pouring into our folks because they're the ones getting the work done every day. Yeah. And then the rest of it is administrivia. It's stuff you got to do, but it's not making the customer could care less, the people could care less, but it's just stuff you got to do because stuff you got to do because you're the boss. It's just, but it's trivial. I call it administrivia because but it's got to happen. But I tried hard to make sure that nothing had to have my approval to get done except a capital request over $3 million. Anything else in the company could happen whether I was there or not. I had a great team.
Yeah. There's two parts of that I want to ask you about. One was, you talked about a core of the job is dealing with investors. Where'd you learn to do that? I mean, you got an animal science degree, you worked on the animal production side. How did that skill emerge?
It's a little known story. So in 2008, our company was not doing very well at all. In the fall of that year, our stock got down to $4 a share. I didn't have much money, but I sold everything I could get and I bought $4 a share stock. I wish I had a lot more. I wish I went and borrowed money to do that. But, and then we added $1.3 billion to our capital structure between September of 2008 and March of 2009. And if we hadn't have done that, we'd have lost the company. It was bad. So in March of 2009, my CFO, Dennis Leatherby, God rest his soul, and then Jim Lochner, who ran beef and pork, fresh meats, and then I went on a 2-week road show selling high-yield junk bonds, selling high-yield bonds. So sat down in the back of the plane with this guy named Matt Klistick with JP Morgan. I said, "Who are you?" "I'm Matt Klistick." "Where do you work?" "JP Morgan." "Never heard of it." He looked at Dennis. Dennis goes, "Okay, never heard of you." "What do you do?" "Well, I'm an investment banker." So Dennis has told me a little bit about this trip, but I don't really understand what we're doing. Can I ask you a few questions? "Yeah." "What's a bond?" And then, like on day 5 or 6, he went to Dennis and he said, "Is he ever going to stop?" And he said, "Nope, that's him." And I got a master's degree in finance from the Matt Klistick School of JP Morgan investment banker in 14 days. And when I came back, and we sold $810 million. Our effective interest rate was 12.5%. That was ugly money. When we got back, Dennis showed me a report. We had 3 weeks worth of cash. And I don't know if you remember much about 2008 and 2009, but that was the financial crisis. And the high yield market, we were in San Francisco, we closed our deal on Thursday. On Friday, there was like a $210 million high yield deal that was done. And then the high yield market shut down for 13 weeks. I mean, that's like Indiana Jones with the door dropping when he slides under and grabs his hat, right? I mean, we were that close to losing the company. That taught me so much. Because before then, I didn't know anything about that, right? And everybody that I knew didn't, but they needed to. And they needed to understand why the balance sheet was so important, why the cash flow statement was so important, why return on invested capital was so important. And so I started teaching my friends what Matt Klistick taught me. And we made a shift over the next couple, 3 years again, thanks to Dennis and his wonderful finance team, we started classes, finance for non-financial managers, just so they could see the tree on how return on, what you do, how it really improves the return on invested capital. And that's when we started making the turn, because we started running Tyson like a business. We had people that understood how important things that, maybe I'll do that, maybe I'll, no. You have to do that. We have to save that money. We got to figure this out. So that's how it all happened.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That time period when your biggest competitors went bankrupt, high feed prices, there's a combination of events.
Yeah, both of us got trapped trading. We're trying to make money in the futures market instead of making money selling chicken. And it's just, it don't work.
Yeah. The other thing you mentioned that you did with your team is talk about leadership. And I saw that you gave a talk at Arkansas not that long ago about some leadership. Just talk to us a little bit about what do you think it means to be a good leader, and what you tried to share with your team?
Yeah, great. I'm going to give you just a capsule.
Yeah.
Humble confidence. That to me, that's what sets a leader apart that I want to serve. I'm not attracted to arrogant people. I'm not attracted to people that think they know it all. I'm attracted to leaders that are humble enough to say, you know what, I don't know that I have the answer, but there's a lot of smart people in this room. Why don't we all get together and figure this out? I bet together we can win. Right? But there's so many people that won't do that. Because, maybe they think the boss is supposed to know. We had 300 and something facilities, 120,000 people spread out all over the world. I didn't know what was happening 1% of the time. You can't, right? But you can put together a good leadership team that'll train good leaders to train good leaders to train good leaders to lead people well and serve them, so that when they come to work today, they know that what they do will make a difference, and it'll make great food for somebody that maybe they know. And so, we showed people that we cared about them, and we did it in so many tangible ways. Number one, create a safe work environment. Our safety metrics, from the time I sat down in the chair to the time I left, were never better. Our food safety metrics were never better. Our quality metrics were never better. Our turnover was record low. Our management turnover was practically non-existent. All those things got better because we ran a better company, and nobody wanted to leave. Because the bonuses were good, we're making great money, we're being successful. And so that's how we showed that we cared. And I don't remember who said it. There's been about 1 million people claim it, but it is true. People don't care what you know till they know that you care. And so we showed our people that we cared about them, and we would listen to them and value their opinion, and allow them to change our minds about how to make the company better. And man, it just came together, and it was so much fun seeing that many people be so successful. It was awesome.
Yeah, that's neat. So you mentioned briefly the international efforts that you're engaged in, and the passion you have for feeding people in the rest of the world. You've got several projects in Rwanda. Maybe just tell us a little bit about how you got involved there, and then sort of what, there's charitable aspects, there's business aspects that you've got going on over there. I should tell the group we've got a Smith Center of, you have to help me on the name,
International Sustainable Agriculture.
At University of Tennessee. Yep. So it's just, tell us a little bit about how you got involved there and what you're doing now.
So it was 2010, hadn't been CEO long. I was in my quiet time one morning, and God just spoke to me and said, it's time. And what that meant was, okay, I've now, you've had a heart for Africa forever. You have a passion for feeding the hungry and feeding people. Now it's time to get going. And I've resourced you. You've got this job. You've got the money you need to do it. Get after it. And so, after a while, we ended up in Rwanda, and we built the nation, in 2014, we stood up the nation's first commercial feed mill. So think about that. Nobody in this room has ever been alive and not been able to go to the co-op and get a bag of chicken feed, right? Anybody here remember never having a co-op that can make commercial feed? Nope. We built the first commercial feed mill in the nation of Rwanda in 2014. God puts this amazing genetic potential in that animal, but if you don't feed it right, it just stays potential. And so what we've done now, and this is all work we do in our foundation. So we have a foundation called the African Sustainable Agriculture Project. And the Smith family, and sometimes others, but mainly the Smith family, donates to ASAP, and then ASAP gives money to Zamura, which is the chicken company in Africa. We've got a feed mill, we've got a table egg farm, and we've got a little broiler business where we've got about 400 growers, smallholder farmers. We trained them how to grow chickens in a week. We gave them a $625 no interest, no term loan. I didn't learn all that much from Dennis, right? I'm giving away no interest, no term loans, but we did. And that built them a 10 by 10 coop and 4 waters, 4 feeders, and 2 clay pots for them to put charcoal in during brooding. And they're off and running. We're doing Aviagen Ross 308s, and today we've got a demo. The training farm we use is today. We grow the broilers there, but we use it to do our little R&D test. And this last grow out, we did a 2.2 kg bird, so it's about 4.75, 4.8 pounds, right? Something like that. 2.2 kg bird, 1.64 feed conversion in 33 days. We're getting there. All Africans, most of our growers don't even have power.
So where do those chickens go? Is there a processing facility?
Well, they're up in the villages on the side of a mountain, and so they don't really have any access to the market. So we go catch them, and we had this lady. She had you could loosely call it a chicken processing business. And we loaned her the money and gave her a floor plan, and she built a small processing plant, and she hand processes about 5,000 birds a week now, and we're the second or third largest producer of broilers in the country at 5,000 a week. I mean, now our grower, the profile of our grower, family of 5, mostly single moms, household income when we started, 85 cents a day. Household income. The family of 5 living on $300 a year. Well, not really living on 300 years because all her kids wouldn't make it. But when we get there, we teach them a simple thing, how to grow a chicken. And now we're actually sending a PhD student. We did a survey when we started. The Smith Center helped me as a USAID, really, really small dollar deal for them. So is our foundation, USAID, and Tennessee was the implementing partner. The Smith Center was. And so we built this little business, and now it's commercially viable, makes money, a little bit of money every week. And those growers have all their school fees are paid, they have insurance, they've started 1 or 2 or 3 or more new income streams. The ones that have paid off their loans, they're doubling, tripling, quadrupling their production. So now some of them are growing 400 or 500 chickens a batch instead of 100. It's so much fun to see them do this. So, and that's all done inside our foundation. We've just committed another $3.5 million to grow. So we're going to do another egg farm. We're going to expand the broiler business. We're going to put down another feed mill. We're going to build a hatchery and a breeder program and just have a real chicken company in Rwanda.
Do you know what happens to those families' incomes? You mentioned 85 cents. Do you know, sort of on average, what's happened after they've adopted?
Well, I can tell you they love me.
Okay.
I'm a Mzungu. That's what they call a white guy in Rwanda. They love that Mzungu. So we will know by the end of the summer because Michelle's going to do the research. I started that sentence and didn't finish it, sorry. So when we started this, we had a 175 question survey that I thought was ridiculously long. But we did it. Now I'm so glad we did that because we know everything about them, how much chicken they ate, whatever they ate, their income, all that stuff. And so now it's about 6 years later, we're going to do that. We're going to redo the survey. Yeah. And so we will, I'm going to tell you that with the multiple income streams they've started, their annual income is probably be multiplied by a factor of 4 or 5. It's significant. Now it's starting from a very low base, but still, somebody wants to triple, quadruple your pay tomorrow. Are you mad? I'm not.
Yeah. So this effort was started sort of as a charitable effort, but do you see a day when it can operate as a business?
Yeah. So let me, I missed a big part there. So we are a tax-paying Rwandan entity. So I believe the only sustainable form of agriculture is commerce. Right? And now I don't mind for the government or any non-profit entity donating money to birth an idea. I don't mind them building the cradle that an idea is born in. But, and I'm not knocking any nonprofits, but in agriculture, if your idea is a good idea and you run it well, it will sustain itself. So the goal of ASAP is to have a chicken business in Rwanda that is not only supporting itself, but is supporting Foundations for Farming, supporting oneegg.org, supporting, Pioneer Bible Translators, supporting, whatever, trade schools, right? Out of our profits, because we have such good profits, we can invest what we need to invest back in the business. We can maintain an adequate working capital, and then donate the rest. And then, as long as you're running a good business, you're generating your gift money every year.
Yeah, I heard a farmer once say, the definition of sustainable is you got to make enough money to show up and do it again next year.
That's exactly right. Yeah, and this is what we do on the foundation side. I'm also commercially involved. When I got out of Tyson, I invested in a poultry business. It's headquartered in South Africa, but we have operations in Mozambique, Botswana, Tanzania, now Kenya, going into Uganda. And we sell cob parents, I think, in 20 different countries in Africa. So it's truly a Pan-African business and growing great. The family's 51, I'm 31 and a half, and the Tyson is 17 and a half. And they help with engineering support, training, that kind of stuff when we need it.
Yeah. So I want to ask you one set of other questions, shift gears on you, and then open up the floor for the rest of you in the room to ask interesting questions. I could go on all day, but I feel like folks probably have more interesting things to ask you. But as was mentioned here on the Board of Trustees at the University of Tennessee, what have you learned about higher ed that you were surprised about?
Great question. Leadership really matters. In the 6 years I'm serving, I was blessed to be able to serve my second 6-year term, just started. And when we started, we had hired an interim president, and he's now our president. He's committed to stay with us now through 2030. He's built a phenomenal team. We have 5 great chancellors. And I've learned that leadership at any organization, leadership really matters. We made the shift from being about, trying to be about, and why, no offense, but why we were trying to be elite at Tennessee with, Vanderbilt and Nashville, I don't know. But anyway, but then we decided that our real purpose for the state is access. And so, we've got, all the, like the lottery and all that stuff. And then we've got the UT Promise, where we pay all tuition and fees for any student from a household that has, I couldn't tell you the actual GPA, but a decent GPA and a decent ACT score. We pay all their tuition and fees if their household income is $75,000 or less. So they go to college for free. That's awesome, right? We're trying now to bump that up to $100,000 and run the numbers there. Because we really do, and I know what Tennessee did for me. And I'm sure y'all have great stories about what Oklahoma State's doing for you. I've learned that if you get a great board and they hire a great leadership team, there is no limit to what you can accomplish. It's amazing. It really is amazing. Tennessee's a great state. The state pours a lot of money into higher education. It's great. But I just can't say enough about the leadership team there. This will be the greatest decade in the history of the University of Tennessee. Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. You were telling me before this about the amount of the increase in state investment, and you if I understood you correct, you really attribute that to the great leadership team that was pulled together there.
They trust the leadership. Mm-hmm. They know that the I'm going to call it the team, Randy and the chancellors and all the administration, they're going to do what they said they would do. If they make a commitment, they will follow through on it. And boy, when your legislature can trust you and say that's a great place to, whatever they have a great idea and they're going to do it because they're consistent and they always do what they say they're going to do. So let's invest there.
Yeah.
Man.
I'm going to ask you this because I think the audience will find it strange. How much do y'all pay your president?
Oh, none. He's awesome. He doesn't draw a salary. He's never turned in an expense report. And the most of the time he's flying around on his own plane. Go get you one of them if you can. They're pretty hard to find, but man, we found ours. Yeah.
Well, I can continue to ask you questions, but I want to just open up the floor and make sure, I suspect lots of people in this room have questions for you. So.
This is always the really scary part, right? Like nobody raises their hand for a minute and I'm going, oh no, what did I say?
I think it's going to be fine. They're nice folks.
Well, I'll start with one. So you mentioned, the investment they're making and letting students come basically pay their education. How are they funding that?
Yeah.
And because you're saying all this growth that's going, how did they get that?
Yeah, enrollment has been record high every year. Retention is record high and has 4-year and 6-year. First-year retention and the 4-year, 6-year graduation rates have all improved steadily each year across the system. So the income that we used to lose when our matriculation rates were lower, we don't lose that anymore. The buildings are all there, the faculty's all there. We just had this first-year churn, right? And now it's a steady growth through the system. And the economics is phenomenal. I would tell you our cash reserve, this will get back up. This is a good place for me to say this actually. I would tell you our cash reserves are too high. We should be doing more to give more Tennesseans more chance at an education. It works. Yeah, if you can get a student in there and keep that student for 4 years. And we haven't raised, the big campus, Knoxville hadn't raised tuition in 3 or 4 years. Now some of the smaller campuses like Martin, I think has, and Chattanooga did, has a time or two. But really it's been without tuition increases. It's just tightening up the ship, running a better business.
Gina?
What was your number one product at Tyson?
My favorite, or
How about number one and then your favorite?
well, so most people think Tyson, they think of chicken, but actually beef was our largest in dollar sales. So, probably the beef muscle cut, ribeyes, the really expensive stuff, ribeyes and fillets would probably be the biggest. My favorite was Wright brand bacon. Yeah, I think it's a sin to serve breakfast and not serve Wright brand bacon. I really do. Yeah.
That's funny. I saw somebody over here.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you for coming. You mentioned about the leadership side. Do you have any thoughts like how the leadership will change during the age of AI?
That's interesting. I don't think I've ever been asked that question before. If I'm right, and we joked earlier, I'm often wrong, but I'm never in doubt. But if I'm right, leadership is leadership, right? So whether you're churning away in some quantum AI world that hardly anybody understands, I still think people that are going to want to work with you will do so because you care about them, you take care of them, you pay them well, you seek their input, you do things together as a team, you don't lord it over them and make them miserable. When they come in every day, they enjoy being around you, they enjoy doing what you do, the work is purposeful. And I don't really see where a heavy concentration on technology changes that a whole lot. I just don't.
What kind of challenges with governments in Africa did she have as you established
Wow.
open business there?
Yeah. Got to be careful here. They might be listening. No, I'm kidding. Rwanda is a great country. The rule of law is there. It's a very safe place to be. I'll go out for a walk or a run at 9 o'clock at night in downtown Kigali and never think a thing about it. So it's really safe. Contract's contract by and large. So there are some African countries that, look, the GDP of Rwanda is 14 million people. It's a postage stamp. I mean, it's a tiny little country. I think it's the most densely populated what do you call it when you're not on the shore? Non-shoreline country in Africa. Which is really why I wanted to do it, because it's a really tough place. It's landlocked and it's a tough place to operate. And my premise was, if we can make a chicken business work here, we can do it anywhere, right? But things go slow. In Tanzania, we needed to build a feed mill. So we needed a economic or environmental impact assessment, right? Everybody does the EIA, right? Well, the government committee that was doing EIAs all got fired. So there was no entity to give you your economic impact assessment. So we just sat there for months while they figured out who they wanted to put on the whatever committee, environmental EPA, right? I mean, are you kidding me? You can't make this stuff up. But it's stuff like that. Transportation infrastructure is really bad everywhere. The power grid, we've never made feed at our feed mill when we didn't lose power at least once to 5 times a week. Never. Not since 14. That's 12 years. There's not a lot of access to capital. Cost of capital is really high. One of the things that you need to do is you need to figure leverage out. So I had our business get a loan to improve their trucks to haul the feed, because our trucks were wore out and we were spending so much money on them. We needed new trucks under warranty. But I made them get a loan, 16% interest. And that's just a common, that's like going to the bank today and getting a 6% mortgage. It's 16% there, right? And the terms are terrible. So other than no infrastructure, no access to capital, terrible finance rates, and a poor power grid, it's awesome. But boy, they desperately need crazy people to go over there and try to do stuff that hadn't been done yet. They really do. My growers are wonderful, smart, hard-working people. Some of them can't even write their own language, but they're wonderful, smart, hard-working people. They just need a chance. They just needed, they had no way to, their house is made out of mud bricks, so it's going to melt every 10 or 15 years. They'll never pass their house down to the next generation to create generational wealth, right? So they have no capital. They don't have anything to borrow against. And so just finding a way to step, now we don't give anything to anybody. A zero interest loan, but you got to pay the loan back, right? Because we need to help them build capacity to take care of themselves on their own. We take these subsistence farmers and we make them agripreneurs, and they're real entrepreneurs, learning how to operate their finances and use their cash flow to get things to work. So it's awesome.
John, did you have a question?
What's the best advice you have for a new animal sciences major?
Don't worry about not getting in vet school. I'm living proof that if you work really hard, you don't have to be smart. That's probably why you're not getting in vet school. But just work real hard and learn to influence people and learn how to communicate with people. There's a great career out there for you. Like I said, we're going to bring 2 billion people on this planet in your working career, and they're all going to want to eat every day. 2,000 plus calories, and we need people that want to feed them. The other advice I would give is bloom where you're planted. There's a great Bible verse, Ecclesiastes 9:10 says, "Whatsoever your hand finds to do, your job, do it with all your might." So many young people, I think, new graduates, oh my gosh, they're so twisted up about their career. You're 22. You got your whole life to screw up and get over it. I'm 66. I got to start being a little more careful. And I'm not too careful because I'm growing a chicken business in Rwanda. But as we were talking about working for private, I don't think I'd take another private equity deal, because now I'm thinking about if it was a 5-year commitment, well, what percent of the rest of my life is that? Is that 20? Is that 75? I don't know. If you're 22, you don't have to think about that. So just get in there, do the best you can, and if you don't like it or you don't like the culture, go get another job. But just wherever you land, wherever you get planted, bloom there. Do the best you can. Try to help as many people as you can from that chair or that desk or that pen or wherever that thing may be, and just see what God will do. He's got a much better plan for you than you do. I guarantee you.
Perhaps to follow up that question a little bit. So you're the president, the CEO of Tyson Food. You mentioned that Tyson Food has employed over 100,000 people, right?
Oh yeah, maybe more than that now. Yeah.
I'm just curious, what are some of those things you think you'd be right to rise up in the corporate ladder, but turning yourself from an animal science graduate to the CEO of a public traded company?
I'll tell you what it didn't have anything to do with was naked ambition. If I had died in the job, I had 5 jobs before I became CEO, I would have died deliriously happy, because I get to make that choice every morning when I wake up. And you know, I didn't run for any office. I just said yes to every opportunity they offered me. You know, I don't know what a serviceman was, but I'll be one, and I'll be the best one you got. Right? Well, he did pretty good at that. That old feed mill's broke down. Let's put him over the feed mill, see if he can fix that like he did that grow out area in Grootley Logger. Okay. So pretty soon, that feed mill's doing really good. Well, he's done pretty good there. I wonder if he could buy grain. He ain't very smart. Let's give him a shot. He'll work hard. Okay. And on and on. I was never trained to do any job I was ever offered at the company. Never. Worked out great. I tell you what my secret was. If I had any secret, it was this. I asked 3 questions whenever I took over any new department, and they were all broke when I took them, right? I was the Mr. Fix-It guy. 3 questions. What are we good at? And I would ask everybody in the department or everybody in the whatever it was, what are we good at? What are we not good at? If you were me, what would you do? Because I just have this theory that nobody wants to come to work every day and be miserable. But a lot of people do. And so I just ask them, right? What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? And if you were me, how would you start fixing this thing? And they all said, we've never had anybody ask us that before. Let's tell him. And so they'd give me all these answers, and I'd play it back to them in a big room like this, and did I get it right? Because if I didn't, y'all let me know, because I'm going to prioritize it a little differently than y'all did, but we're going to go do what you said needed to be done. And so if y'all were lying or making up some story, we're about to be in a world of hurt, because I'm trusting you that you told me how to fix this thing, and I've got the courage to trust you. They never let me down. And it just kept working.
Maybe one more. Lauren, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was going to say, you sit in this really unique position where you've worked for a global company, you're board of trustees at a land-grant institution, and then you do nonprofit work as well internationally. How do you connect with individuals who want to know about the work we do, especially in agriculture, land grants, and why it's not just valuable to our state where we're located, but to also be involved internationally in agriculture?
Oh, how do I do it? I'm terrible at it. Yeah, but how should it be done? Yeah, so when we started the Smith Center, the thing we faced was, well, wait a minute. These are Tennessee tax dollars paying your salaries. What do we care about what's going on in some part of the world? Well, has the conflict in Ukraine had any impact on your life? Yeah. Energy prices are up. Grain shot up because it all got blowed up. I mean, so yeah. Being involved, number one, I have never met a student that went on a study abroad or a short-term trip or anything that didn't come back and say, oh my gosh, I'll never be the same. What's one of the hardest things we have to train young graduates to do when they get into a business? Like, I don't know, you're going into animal farm, or you're going into, a plant breeder, or you're going into a big feedlot or whatever. It's how to get along in that culture, right? Well, that's what you learn over there. You learn you learn that there's a whole lot of the world that doesn't have it near as good as you do. So you really ain't all that. You need to pay that forward, and you need to learn how to adapt to different cultures. Those are critical things that can help any employee, any team member, anybody in any church, anywhere, make their community, county, state better. You know, Tom Gill, the Smith Chair, we're doing a lot better about creating that message. But I feel it in my heart, but I'm just heads down trying to get done what God's assigned me to do before He calls me on, you know? And so and that's what I tell you, ag communications, if there's a field we really need, it's ag communications. Think about it. Here's agriculture. And every one of you are in a different discipline. Some are animals, some are plant, some are, you know, plant-based meat, some are everything. And so you've all got your own channel with your own message. Okay? And you're very passionate about getting your message out. So you've cranked up the volume. So think about having, 75, 80 radios, all tuned to a different channel, all cranked up to the highest volume possible. What would this room be like? I got ADHD, I would run. It would drive me crazy. That's what ag sounds like today. Nobody can hear anything. And we're all screaming at the top of our lungs about what we're desperately passionate about, but nobody hears any of it. Because we suck at communications. Now we're great at science, we're great, but we gotta have help. We've got to get this right, or what's going to happen. Think about this. You get your favorite congressional person that you don't like in your mind, okay? Or I'll tell you, I got an even better way to illustrate it. So I was speaking in a food science class, a freshman level food science class at the University of Tennessee, and I shocked a young lady when she learned that we actually had to kill the chicken to make the nugget. Now think about that. Land-grant university. Now she's old enough to be your congressman or congresswoman, making your laws. That's scary. This is really important to getting. Borlaug said it right. He said, we have the technology to feed 10 billion people on this planet. What I don't know is whether or not we'll get permission to use it. And he was right. We have got to win this communication war. We have a fascinating, fabulous, humanitarian message. We feed the world. Like your banner out there, you need to have permanent letters that say that. That's really important. But no, they're not hearing us. But we have a great message. I was doing a deal at the Tennessee Poultry deal. I got to shut up. At the Tennessee Poultry deal, and I was standing on a chair screaming at the audience because at that time, every time you turned on the news, any news channel, they were saying, just follow the science. Y'all remember that? It's probably 2012, 13, something like that. And I was going, that's our tagline. We've got the science on our side. Just follow the science. We're right. We've been right for 35 years, but everybody thinks we're wrong. We're not wrong. We're right. And we're good. Got fired up on that one, didn't I? Who asked that question? She lit a fuse, didn't she?
She's good. She actually happens to be in the ag education, communication,
awesome.
and leadership
Awesome.
So she teed you up.
You
quite
go,
well
girl.
For that. So, well,
if any of your students ever need motivation, I'm 3 hours away. Okay.
Well, good. Well, Donnie, we really appreciate your time being here. That's certainly very insightful. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to be here and share some wisdom with us. So
It's fun.
Let's give Donnie.
Thank y'all.